So I'm going really hardcore pressure for the boots. I really want the boots to kind of stand out, so I'm just doing a side diagonal hatch for those and then crisscrossing it. Yeah, that beard's gonna be tricky, huh? Let's try the nose first, right? Gonna do a side diagonal hatch for the nose. Maybe do 2 layers for the underside of the nose and maybe 1 layer for the top. I'm definitely gonna do curls or squigglies for the beard. At least this part of the beard. I kind of want him to have curly hair. That'd be kind of neat. And then I'm going to do long strokes for the mustache. But if you want to do curls for the mustache too, that's totally up to you. I think I'm going to continue this kind of polka dot theme up into the hat. Heck, if you wanted to do a bunch of circles for the shading on the hat, you could if you wanted to. So here I'm really taking a very light layer and I'm kind of coloring around my holes that I want to stay white. Um, this is called negative drawing. We are literally taking the white of the paper and using it to create a shape. So the way I'm doing this is I'm feathering in using a light touch. And I'm trying to make sure that I'm varying my lines. When necessary, if I want a shadow to appear darker, I'll just add an additional layer of ink using either more pressure or if I want it to be more controlled, then the same pressure as layer number 1. Each layer, your color is going to get darker and darker and darker regardless. So it's not going to hurt to go slow and light and work your way up if you need to. Here I'm adding a little bit of extra pressure on the edge of my hat, specifically because I want that edge to pop. So now that I'm done with my first layer, I'm now going to start kind of feathering around my hat. I don't like how the edges are light here, so I'm kind of adding an additional layer to kind of make that hat seem a little more solid. It's super important to go slow with this step, especially if you're doing the negative drawing technique to create that pattern in your hat. So wherever you want your shadow to be a little bit darker, you're going to add an additional layer. I'm kind of shooting for an ombre effect here. I really want the hat to separate from the beard, so I'm going to add a very, very thin layer of ink between the fuzzy part of the hat and the beard. I'm also going to use some very soft, brushy kind of curved strokes for the cotton ball. Now that we have finished our adorable Christmas gnome, it is now time to do the background. So right now I am working on the opening of my igloo. To help separate my igloo from my gnome, I am doing a crosshatch. I am starting very lightly using butterfly kisses along the surface of my paper in a diagonal fashion. Here I'm trying to build the background so it looks like the hole in the igloo is three-dimensional. In order for me to do that, I'm going to need to add an additional layer or two of ink. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do that just yet, so now I'm kind of sketching in the kind of cracks and crevices in which the igloo blocks would make. I'm not doing a full out rectangular shape because that isn't how shadow works. I'm actually making some markings where the blocks are kind of touching each other. We call this a double shadow. Snow and ice are really light in color and almost translucent at times. So, right here is where you have to be super delicate and you have to be really mindful of the strokes as you're putting them on the paper. My brain is telling me that igloo is kind of disappearing into my background. That's specifically because I don't have any color or any shade or shadow behind said igloo to kind of make it pop forward. So in order to fix that, I am going to add a layer of shadow to the mountains in the background. I am going to press a little bit harder, probably medium pressure at this point, and I'm going to do this in a side diagonal hatch to kind to emphasize the flattened plane going up at a slight incline. My side diagonal hatch is going to be slightly diagonal. It's not going to be too steep, but I want to make it so that it almost looks like the side of a mountain. In order to make my background kind of separate from my midground, I need to make sure that I repeat this kind of shadowy shape around the edges of my igloo and around the edges of my gnome. Doing my mountains a lot darker than my gnome and my igloo is going to make both the igloo and the gnome pop out more and appear more front and center. And that, my friend, is how you can draw a cute Christmas gnome using pen and ink.